Hello out to all you wonderful people. This is Andre, the Game Idea Guy. Thank you once again for lending me your time and your ear listening into another What If from me and Segaverse Part 3. And I'm finally going to go ahead and draw the Streets of Rage connections. So, we already know that eSWAT is connected to Streets of Rage, right? Because the eSWAT car that's in the same in every level of eSWAT at the beginning of the level, the car that gets you to where you need to go in and infiltrate the gang hideouts. That's the car that is the backup car in Streets of Rage 1. So that's the backup that they have in Streets of Rage 1 that comes out and helps them, like the eSWAT team. That's that car and those officers. So that's automatically connected. And if that's connected and the connection I made to Virtual Cop last time sits, then that would mean that Virtual Cop is connected to Streets of Rage. And that means that Streets of Rage happens in Virtual City. The city in Streets of Rage is Virtual City. So, like, again, these are my connections. This isn't something I'm saying is set in stone, but they make sense. So, the Syndicate is one of the most major gangs in this city, in Virtual City. And Axel, Adam, and Blaze were all police officers or former police officers throughout this series. Whether it be from the very first game where they were ex-cops going down to take out the biggest bankrollers of corruption in the city, or after that when Adam went back to being an officer, and I guess you could consider Blaze and Axel to be vigilantes at this point. One way or the other, they have been involved with the most reputable and one of the most wealthy gangs in the city. Now, here's a connection to Shinobi. Like, here's a direct connection to Shinobi people probably wouldn't even think about. In Streets of Rage 3, Mr. X's body is basically it's garbage. His body is done for, and his mind is in like a jar and stuff, and he's controlling different things from behind the scenes. A lot of the mechanical robots that are in Streets of Rage 3 are very similar in design to the later robots that are used by Neo-Zed and Shinobi 3. Especially the Shadow Master robot, and its design is so because it's supposed to fight like Joe. So like that gets me the idea like that android is meant to be like the Axel clone android. Like just without the without the Joe Musashi skin. So it's like the same technology went into that. Like the same idea and theory went into that. And I looked at that like, I don't know, I guess that just kind of threw me for a loop when I looked at it. Like, you think about that, and both those games came out around the same time. I'm like, shoot, like these are possibly interconnected. Whereas the team from Streets of Rage had to do a lot of the groundwork and stuff, and deal with a lot of stuff in the city. Joe wasn't really dealing with inner city stuff. He was dealing with like things inside like different facilities and he was basically dealing with like specific places to take down Neo-Z because he knew where, basically I guess you could say he knew where their hideouts were. Whereas the Streets of Rage crew was taking on the Syndicate. All of this could have happened all at the same time. All of this stuff could have been happening at the same time. It could have been, like, maybe not the exact same time, but the periods of time could have been relative to each other, is what I'm saying. Where you had the Laxine bombs from the Streets of Rage, and, like, it would make sense that if the Syndicate has their hands on a lot of deadly technology, like a lot of destructive technology, and they are possibly connected to Neo-Zed, that they would share what they have with them. And it's probably something that they had been doing from the beginning. Because, like, even if you go back to Streets of Rage 2, they were dealing with a lot of robotics and stuff like that, and a lot of black market robotics and stuff. So that doesn't actually shock me. Like when you take the characters like Electra, who's in Streets of Rage 2, she's missing a hand. Like that's a whip. Like she has a whip arm. She's missing a hand. So she's been cybernetically enhanced. Maybe further than we know, like, but she was cybernetically enhanced. She wasn't just a normal woman running around with like an electronic whip. Like it was embedded in her, like it was a part of her body. And all of the characters, all of those mook types, like it was a part of their body. So I don't know. Again, this is me looking into. Maybe I'm looking a little too deep. But like, it just makes sense to me that those connections would be there. Sorry, wait. That's just my thought. Now, let's move on. Connecting this to Virtua Fighter. Now, if what I'm saying makes sense, and Virtua City is where all of this stuff is happening, it would make sense that characters like Adam and Axel and Blaze don't necessarily have time to participate in the tournaments in Virtua Fighter, which unfortunately I would think that they should be able to, and that's something Sega should have done. But if they're busy trying to take down like gang threats, like on a regular basis, basically doing police work and stuff, it makes a good deal of sense. Especially, I think Adam is believed the police chief anyway after after Streets of Rage 3. I believe he becomes the police chief. Like he takes over the role. So again, it would make sense. Now there's a character, what's this girl's name? Dark skinned girl with like white hair. I think her name is Vanessa. She started out as a security guard in Virtua Fighter 4. I believe she actually does become an officer after that. Like, but again, the outfit that she wore is very, very reminiscent of the Virtual Cop outfits. So she was kind of like a representative for Virtual Cop without being a representative for Virtual Cop. And she basically took place of Janet in the in the Virtua Fighter series. So again, maybe it's just me overthinking. Maybe just me looking too far into it. But if we were to go ahead and say that, like that, Vanessa ended up becoming a part of the police force, and she ends up working under Adam Hunter, like as one of his special officers and stuff like that. But like I believe her goal was to be a police officer. I like, if I remember correctly, she was in the tournament as like the bodyguard for Sarah. Again, my memory is a little fuzzy, but I've actually talked about all this before. For like a Streets of Rage video that was during the summer. Once the Streets of Rage 4 announcement came out. But I went a little overboard. That's why you're getting these separate Segaverse videos. What the hell was I going to say? I lost my train of thought. I was like stuck on the character. Crap. I have to reset my thoughts. So like I got into this and then I got sidetracked with that, and it's just like my brain just said, nope, this is the halt point here. Okay. Connecting Virtual Cop to Streets of Rage. Not Virtual Cop, Virtua Fighter. Gosh. Okay. Now, trying to believe, what was it? Who was it? Lao Chan is the character. That's Pai Chan's father. I believe he died. But the Dural looks very, again, it all comes down to the technology that's used in the games. When you think about like what I said before about the Dural program, where they possibly taking women from ninja villages and using them to create this android warrior that they spawned clones of. There we go again, yawning. That they made clones of. And that Kage himself is trying to figure out what happened to his actual mother. Now, looking at that and making the implication that Neo Zed was one of the ones kidnapping the women for this program, and let's say the syndicate was helping bankroll it because they were the ones that got their hands on the technology that made it available. The only thing that we are missing would be those that are above the syndicate to figure out who was pulling the strings. Like, yeah, we know Mr. X was the big bad of the syndicate, but that doesn't mean he was the complete big bad. Like, and that could be something that just needs to be made up. Like, because if, again, you look at all of the gangs in Virtua City, they look like they're smaller versions of the gangs that were fought in eSWAT, and we know that eSWAT is connected to Streets of Rage through the fact that the officers were in Streets of Rage 1. Like, and like you could think of the Syndicate back then as an upstart group that was just getting bigger and bigger. Like, that's how I look at that. Like, and that's where those connections just all fall right into place. Which is cool for me, honestly. Like, and it makes, again, it's stuff that makes sense to me. Like, that all of these worlds would be interconnected, and like, and a lot of these events would take place around the same time. So, I'm still going over this mentally in my head because, like, there's a lot that would interlink and that would make a lot of sense, especially if games later down in the series like Virtua Fighter 5 and 6 will call upon certain characters to be available in an investigative manner into like certain events that might be happening around the tournament. This is kind of why I wish that they would bring the virtual cop characters back into the game and let them participate too. And I know I haven't said much about Fighting Vipers, but again, my experience with Fighting Vipers is kind of limited. And honestly, if anything is connected to Virtua Fighter, Fighting Vipers is probably likely connected to it too, because they share an existence of worlds. So they could just be two separate tournaments that just like every once in a while, the champions of the tournaments take each other on to see who's the best. So like that's something that just makes sense along the way. Basically kind of how Street Fighter is like interconnected with so many different games in its series, like Rival Schools and Final Fight and a couple others, even Captain Commando at some point. So again, just stuff that makes sense to me. Like, you don't have to agree, but like I think I make a decent argument that these worlds are all somewhat connected to each other, somewhat linked. And like that their events are maybe not all happening at once, but they're all taking place relative to each other. So those make sense to me. The only trouble I have is connecting the later Shinobi games, like the PS2 era Shinobi games, to everything else. Like, it still kind of makes sense that it will all take place around the same area, but again, I kind of get the idea that those games actually do take place in Japan, unless Virtua City is part of Japan, and then that would make a whole hell of a lot more sense. But at the same time, it doesn't, because then you have characters like Axel, Adam, Blaze, you have Janet, the other guys from Virtual Cop, as well as the guys from eSWAT, and it's kind of like a hodgepodge. So you don't want to just say, hey, this is definitely here, but there could be elements of these places there that are specifically there, so that you don't alienate the availability of the other characters. Gosh, that was a mouthful there. I'm looking for, like, this is something else I'm missing, and I know I'm missing it, and I'm like, there's another piece here, but I'll probably save that for the fourth part. Where I kind of just wrap everything up, because I know there's something else I'm missing. There's another game, and I know I had thought about it before, and I'm missing it right now. So I have to go ahead and do some kind of quick research and look some stuff up. But thank you guys very much for listening. Keep your eyes and ears up for more stuff from me. And until the next time, enjoy your games. Peace out. And go ahead and give your ideas and thoughts down below.